It seems to be entirely lost in the memories of the American citizens, and if remembered would enable them to fully comprehend what is now occurring, is one of the most monumentous events that ever occurred in their entire history on September 10th, 2001, and was when the U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld announced to the U.S. Congress that the Pentagon had lost track of $2.3 trillion in transactions. But that was followed up by less than 24 hours later by a catastrophic and devastating attack on both the Pentagon and New York City, and we all know what that accounts to. With America being embroiled in continuous wars since that fateful day on September 11th, 2001, the Pentagon was never brought to account by the U.S. Congress. That is, until this last year of the Obama administration, when it passed a bill authorizing a staggering $900 million to be paid to audit the Pentagon. So for the past year, 1,200 outside auditors headed by Ernst & Young swept into the Pentagon to begin the most expensive and extensive audit in American history, but whose efforts ended in total failure a few weeks ago when on November 15th, 2018, they shockingly reported that they couldn't do it because the numbers were so screwy and impenetrable they couldn't make sense of anything, but in whose failure were able to document that fully $21 trillion was missing from the Pentagon actually, which is as much as the whole entire U.S. debt in the history of our country. None of this, of course, was reported to the American citizens by their mainstream propaganda media, but it didn't escape the notice of the newly elected deep state-aligned socialist-communist U.S. Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who quickly tweeted out to her leftist followers, quote, $21 trillion in Pentagon financial transactions could not be traced, documented, or explained. Medicare for all costs $32 trillion. That means 66% of Medicare for all could have been funded already by the Pentagon, unquote. A gutting for their resources the Pentagon will never allow, and is why they created the mysterious U.S. military intelligence organization QAnon, to place President Donald Trump into power to make sure it could never happen. As to what has happened to the $21 trillion discovered missing from the Pentagon that could have paid off the entire national debt of the United States, one needs to look no further than a British citizen the UK keeps surrounded by armed guards and refuses to hand over to the American citizens named Gary McKinnon, who, over a 13-month period between February of 2001 and March of 2002, perpetrated, quote, the biggest military computer hack of all time, unquote, when he broke into and stole both the Pentagon's and NASA's most highly classified secrets, the most important of them being evidence proving that the United States was conducting reverse engineering on alien spacecraft, and whose success in doing so McKinnon revealed by his stating, quote, I also got access to Excel spreadsheets. One was titled Non-Terrestrial Officers. It contained names and ranks of U.S. Air Force personnel who are not registered anywhere else. It also contained information about ship-to-ship transfers, but I've never seen the names of these ships noted anywhere else, unquote. Unique among any other American able to keep the U.S. military's extraterrestrial secrets from being known and kept their massive space fleet budget from being exposed, is President Donald Trump, the nephew of one of the greatest geniuses in U.S. history, named John G. Trump, who himself on January 8th of 1943 took possession from the United States Office of Alien Property of all the secret research compiled by the acknowledged greatest genius in human history and just deceased Nikola Tesla, research that included Tesla's Talking with the Planet's documentation he revealed little about, except for a New York Times article on July 12, 1937, wherein he stated, quote, "I have devoted much of my time during the year past to perfecting of a new small and compact apparatus by which energy in considerable amounts can now be flashed through interstellar space to any distance without the slightest dispersion," unquote, thus making it clear why the mysterious U.S. military intelligence organization QAnon placed President Trump into power and will protect him at all costs, most particularly because at the same time martial law imposition in the United States is growing near. It may soon follow with it having to be imposed on the entire world, unprepared for what's coming next.
When it comes to space, too often, for too many years, our dreams of exploration and discovery were really squandered by politics and bureaucracy, and we knocked that out. So important for our psyche, what you're doing. It's going to be important monetarily and militarily, but so important for right up here, the psyche. We don't want China and Russia and other countries leading us. We've always led. We've gone way far afield for decades now, having to do with our subject today. We're going to be the leader by far. We're behind you 1,000%. When it comes to defending America, it is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance in space. So important. Very importantly, I'm hereby directing the Department of Defense and Pentagon to immediately begin the process necessary to establish a Space Force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement.
What do you want first, the good news or the bad news? The good news for lawmakers and government watchdogs who've been demanding a Pentagon audit for years, that audit is now complete. The bad news, the Pentagon failed. But the Defense Department is trying to put a positive spin on it. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin is at the Pentagon tonight to tell us how. Good evening, Jennifer.
Good evening, Brett. Since 1990, Congress required all government agencies to undergo an audit. The Pentagon resisted, arguing it was too big and unwieldy to comply. Last December, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis ordered the Pentagon's first ever audit, which has just been released. The headline, as you mentioned, is that the Pentagon failed its inaugural audit, but Pentagon officials say that is beside the point. Quote, "We failed the audit, but we never expected to pass it. We never thought we were going to pass an audit. Everyone was betting against us that we wouldn't even do the audit." The review found inventory discrepancies and that the Pentagon thought it owned certain buildings and installations that it no longer owns. It also found redundant military IT systems badly in need of better cybersecurity. The audit itself cost $413 million and was conducted by 1,200 auditors who visited 900 military sites. They examined $2.7 trillion in assets. The problems will cost an estimated $559 million to fix, according to the Pentagon. The chairman of the House Armed Services Committee said the audit should not be an excuse for arbitrary defense budget cuts.
So far, there's been no finding of fraud or any of that sort of thing. Mainly, the problem is that one set of financial or accounting systems cannot talk to another. I think the biggest surprise may be that the Pentagon does not actually own as many buildings as it thought it did.
The audit did not get into issues of waste like that found by airmen at Travis Air Force Base who figured out how to save taxpayer money when they learned that a special water kettle used on board warplanes cost a whopping $1,280. When the kettle's handles break, they now use a 3D printer to replicate replacement handles rather than buying new kettles. The Air Force is now using 3D printing to save millions of taxpayer dollars through 3D printing of parts for older aircraft as well. Brett?
Okay, Jennifer Griffin live at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you.